This is an RDS radio that I've had for quite a while, and I use it in the workshop. Unfortunately, it's got a few problems. It changes channels when I don't want it to, takes ages to start up, and most of the time when you start it up it doesn't have half the radio stations on there. So I've now replaced it with a radio that doesn't do those things. And so this is surplus to requirements, and I dislike it so much I'm going to take it apart, see if there's anything I can salvage. There is a sort of backlit LCD display there, and it is quite a nice case. It's got some spaces for batteries. It's got a DC in socket, headphones on off, power switch, some buttons and a display, and that's sort of nice for some sort of microcontroller thing maybe, so the case might be salvageable. But let's have a look and see what's inside and see whether we can repurpose some of it. Alright, finally got into it, and what have we got? Not a lot actually. So there's cable there, which I'll probably just pull out. That's nice, it's got connectors. Antenna, speaker, that's plugged in. And we've got another connector there. They've got the time and trouble of putting connectors in. Let's take this off. This is probably just a keyboard PCB. Let's see what's on this board. Oh, there we go, so at least there's some soldered on ICs. That makes a change. Let's see if we can find out what these parts are. Part numbers on there. Let's get some light on there. Yeah, M471, 4871. And some other stuff. And some cans, which are maybe not soldered. Maybe. There's a module under there, FC8K module, and there's a few chips under here, so I'm going to look those parts up, see whether we can use that. Let's have a look on the back of the keyboard. Okay, so that's a load of buttons, normal, that's it. Lots of buttons, and the LCD is a sort of LCD module is that. There's a backlight on it, it's quite neat. And it's actually been fixed in by melting the plastic here and here, that's not good. Flexi onto the PCB there, so that's the LCD connections just there. There's a dot matrix display, so probably desolderable. What sort of display is it? Does it have brains? Something like an I2C. There's only, oh no, there are more lines. There's about 7 or 8 lines. So that's, so I will peel the backlight thing off. Does that reflector come off? We can have a look at the back. That's the backlight there. We've got the backlight supply and then some other connections. How many we got? We've got LED something. 1, 2, 3. That's ground. A couple there. That connector must also have the that connector there must have the switches on it as well. Okay, I think the switches are done with different values of resistors down a couple of lines. So that's two lines for the buttons, ground, 2 LEDs. That means that LCD is driven by 3 signals, so that might be some form of could be I2C or SPI, because it's a dot matrix display, so that must have some sort of intelligence in it. Unfortunately there's no part number on it. So it'd be nice if I could talk to that, because then I'd have a display for the box. So that will need a little bit of the old reverse engineering. Find out what's on those signals. I've got a power supply in there, I could do that. So if I connect everything back together, what have we got here? That's the power. Don't think we need an antenna. I'm not going to be using this as a radio. Let's get that off. Cheapest connectors you can imagine. Don't need that. That's the front. So, if I haven't broken anything, I plug this in the back. It'll either smoke or it'll turn on. How did you turn it on? Good question. It should have come up and it hasn't. Where's that? Because it's off. Let's turn it on. What's going on? Oh, there we go. Something's not happy. There we go. So, whoa. Yeah, so if I turn it off and back on, there you go, still working. So we can probably run some cables off that and have a look on the scope, see what on earth is going on that display. That looks like a salvageable display. Let's disassemble some of this. Let's get some wires. That'll be pretty easy to solder some wires on there. Ground, pretty sure that's ground there. Ground, and then we will bung 3 wires on. Right, so with the oscilloscope and attaching to 2 of the wires, one was obviously a clock, one was obviously data, and then there was what looked to be an ACK, so that had a different voltage level to the data. And of course that looks like I2C, so I used the scope on its I2C decoding mode, and yep, it's I2C, so you can see the data flying down. And fortunately there's a clock mode you can set this up to, somewhere around here, and like that, which means once a second you get an update and you can watch that tick away. So that display is a backlit I2C 3.3 volt display. I think the other line, this one here, I think that's actually a reset. I think that resets the display. That just pulses when the unit powers up. So yeah, I think that display is very useful. That'll be usable in something. Not entirely sure about control codes like cursors and so on, but that'll be you can find that out by looking at the trace. Actually I can have a look at that now, see if I can find out what's going on. There are a couple of bursts. One is the character data, and the other burst is probably, if I can trigger off it, is probably, I think I've lost a ground there. It's not looking very happy. It's probably the cursor positioning. There is a burst of data there, and if I can find out the controller, then obviously I get a bit of chance of using it. Let's try a single shot. There we go. So what have we got? We've got a what have we got here? 3 3 characters maybe. The I2C address is 3E for that display. I'll write that down. Yeah, I'm going to have to try and find a controller which matches all those data bytes. But I think this is going to be usable. I can muck around with it and get that actually displaying data, I think. And being 3.3 volts, I can use a blue pill, anything really. That's 3.3 volts, even a 5 volt with a level shifter, so that's quite nice. Not really bothered about the radio part, but this button and display PCB, that could just go straight back into the case, and that could be the buttons and display, and then I can use that case for something else. So yeah, I think that's going to be reusable. It's going to be more use than as a radio.